Within each of us, there are two sides.
Hey, I've got a really good idea for Fable.
It's like being at mission control during an Apollo mission or something like that, you know, until that damn thing's down, there's no way you're going home.
People who think that they'll make castles out of human bones are probably going to be disappointed.
Which will you choose?
So there's Fable.
Yeah, this is effectively Fable, yeah.
This fall,
One of the things you can be is ridiculous. It's actually a setting.
prepare to take the journey of a lifetime.
They worked out someone playing the game every day on their own for like 3 years or something.
I'm going to come in whatever time you got up, work till you couldn't work anymore.
It's a tale of the legend of a guy capturing it on architecture in space has always been part of human history.
I think it certainly is. I don't think there's an RPG like it. It's everything that I could possibly dream of them to be.
Fable. For every choice, a consequence.
Thanks very much for your time today, Peter. I know you're probably extremely busy right now with the Fable nearing completion.
Well, actually not. It's because my time, as lead designer on Fable is over. It's been over for about 3 weeks now, and this is where it can get very frustrating because no matter what you see, you just cannot change it. You can't change it at all. I haven't been able to change much on Fable for 6 weeks because if I had walked into the team and said, "Hey, I've got a really good idea for Fable," they probably would have shot me or something like that.
Is there an element of nervousness right now? I mean, you say
Absolutely.
for 6 weeks now
No,
you
absolutely.
haven't done anything.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I didn't. Yesterday and today, I got about 3 hours sleep because I couldn't get sleep because I was. I mean, it is a really terrifying time. There's so much expectation around Fable, and letting people who expect this game to be something play the game, and that's what's happening today. It is nerve-wracking, and I'm incredibly proud of what Fable is, and I think it is, an incredible game. Of course, I would say that, but it was when we started out, Simon, Dean, myself, 4 years ago, and Ian, there was 4 of us, and to actually go from that sort of first vision of let's do a role-playing game and let's do it in a completely different way to actually getting the game out seems like a very long time, but actually there's a hell of a lot of work between then and now. I mean, especially in the last year, about a year and a half almost, really people have been working every hour that God sends, and there are people that have worked on Fable that have not seen their partners or seen anything of the outside world. I mean, it's an amazing amount of dedication behind the game.
And from your point of view, would you say that the experience of making Fable has been what you would have expected it to be when you started the project?
I think most games, when you start them, I always have a picture in my head, and that picture really, up until around about now, the final game has not been close to that picture. But actually, Fable has changed a bit as we developed it. It's part of the way that we develop games. We don't do it so much currently, but the idea that you start with this core idea, and the core idea with Fable is making a player feel like a hero, making them feel like a completely unique hero, that they can be who they want, they can be, these are not choices that you make at the start, and that this hero is set within this world, which is kind of like a living world. I think the game is exactly close to that, but on the way of sort of developing that, there are some things that we've dropped, actually more things we've dropped, and there are more things that we put in. For example, at the start, we didn't really think about this expression system at all. The idea that being able to communicate to people and express your self and sort of almost chat to them without using any text at all, that came in about 18 months ago. We did have an idea at the start where we would want all the trees to grow and the foliage to grow, and because you were playing through a life of a hero from a sort of 12-year-old kid up to you finishing the game when you're in the sort of 20s, 30s, 40s, depending on how you play it. We wanted to have the trees growing, and we dropped that because it took too much processor power to actually do that, and we'd much rather put that into the hero. So there are things that have gone into Fable and things that have been taken out, mainly, hopefully, to make the game better. And I think that the end result is something I'm incredibly proud about. I mean, it's everything that I could possibly dream the game to be. I mean, okay, I will admit that there are things in there which I think, God, we could have spent a little bit more time on that. We could have spent a little bit more time on the other. But, building a huge game, a vast game, which is this action game and this role-playing game and this simulated world and all the leveling system and all the hundreds of items in the world, building that and polishing it, trying to polish it to get to as good as it can be is, I think, a real achievement.
As far as the story is concerned, I mean, this is obviously quite a central element of the game. Would you consider it to be the central element? I mean, do you consider Fable to be more about the experience of playing it or what you've actually done?
Here's the thing, is when you sit down and you think, well, today games are more than just this sort of brute force games that they used to be. There needs to be more than just a story, and there needs to be more than just gameplay. I mean, when I first started, all the games that I did were just about pure gameplay. There was no story. I mean, the first game that I did called Populous, I actually forgot that we had to do an end game. And nowadays, the games are more than the story. The way that we wanted to pitch Fable was, some people will go into this game and they'll just want to play the story. They'll want to play section after section after section, story element after story element. They'll want to go through the story as quickly as possible. They want to be bombarded with what's happening. And the game is definitely structured like that. You can absolutely go from story element to story element. But here's the thing. We put lots of temptations in your path. And I really wanted people to feel, God, there's a whole world out there. I'm a hero, I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this. And almost to feel slightly, just for a few minutes, what am I going to do? I can do anything. And that's where the flow of the story is really important. What I do next. You can get distracted and you can go off and you can go on little sub-quests and sub-missions and you can get more money and you can do trading and all of those things. But with a moment you think, okay, what should I really be doing? Is where you have to go back to the story and realise that, I have got to go and do this to this section of the story because I get this or because it does this to the world.
One of the most interesting things that you've talked about in the past on the subject of the game is the AI. I mean, you've mentioned that there are 5 different AI systems powering the game. I mean, I was interested if you could elaborate on what those systems are doing and how they affect the game.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is that there is a world, and there's a global AI system managing things like the economy and the population levels, and because that's a global system, you've got some really nice things happening. Like you can go in, when you're not very famous, you can go into a town and you can steal things and you can be pretty mean, and then you can go into a different town that's miles and miles away and no one would hear about you or know about you. But as you get more famous, then rumours of this dark hero or this dark knight or whatever you call yourself spread around the world, and that is that global AI system working. The idea that if you go into one town, and this actually happened a few days ago. This is amazing that this happened. Again, this is not by design. This is by play, which is very different. In other words, when we sat down and thought about this, we didn't think about this eventuality as a consequence. What a kid did this a few weeks ago, he came up to me and said, I've heard that there's this amazing economy system and I don't believe it. I said, well, do what you want to do. So he went away and he went into a town. He killed all the people in the town because he rationalised that if everyone was dead, then all the prices of the houses should fall and all the prices of the goods could fall because no one would want them. He brought up the whole town, every house, every shop, waited for the people to come back in to start populating the town again. The house prices went back up and he rented all the houses out and he became the landlord of the town. And that is, emergent gameplay. It's not designed, it's just a factor of having this one system out there. So that's one of them. Then the next system down is about towns and it's about people within those towns. So if you start doing something within a town, quickly the whole town will react. If you start doing mean things in town, people will just close their doors and, it's like the way I think about towns is the way I think about westerns. When gunslingers used to come into town, they used to, everyone used to get scared and not be on the streets, and that's exactly what happens. And there's things with that AI system that is about people reacting to you, people coming out and celebrating if you're a really good hero, people being scared if you're an evil hero, all of those things which are sort of much more local. Then below that level there is the hero AI, and that is what your hero looks like, how he changes. If you start doing evil stuff, then I know this sounds just pathetic, is you've got his jaws just slightly offsets, so he looks like he's pretty mean just by changing his jaw, by changing muscles and the weapons he uses. And then the AI system below that is the monster AI, the creature AI, how it reacts to your gameplay. And if you take a bow and arrow out and someone else has got a bow and arrow, they won't charge towards you with their bow and arrow. They'll leap behind the nearest rock, and you literally have a fight between the objects. So all of those AI systems sort of kind of work together to hopefully give you a sort of reactional game. I missed one out actually. There's the villager AI.
The which AI?
The villager AI. The idea that there's each person's got a unique AI about them. They've got a memory. To a certain extent, they've got a memory about what you do. So if you walk up to someone and say hello, they'll just say hello. If you walk up to them again and say, you express yourself and you say hi, you be nice to them with expression, they'll be much more friendly and they remember you, what you've done. So, that's pretty cool as well.
Fable, in terms of the Japanese market, you mentioned that you may consider changing the lead character. Has there been any progress on that line of thought?
Yeah, that was a while ago that we thought about that, and changing the lead character, as you can imagine, is not a trivial task because there's so much that goes into making that main character. So I doubt that we will change it for the Japanese market. I mean, we looked into it. We actually when we were originally conceiving the game, we wanted there to be you could choose between being a boy or a girl. And actually, at the start of the game, there's a brother and a sister, and you play the brother now. But we had to not do the sister because of the sheer amount of work that was involved. Still, morphing with the girl would have had certain interesting attributes about it.
Also the normal line of people like IT department. So this is mainly scripting, game programmers and artists in the back, and writers and cinematics in the back, animators in the corner, more artists there, and then the AI, and this is the production of Fable.
And they got me in ages ago to start turning what was a concept, a kind of the fairy tale idea, very brief story, into
proper full story with dialogue and plot points and bifurcations where you can do good and evil things, all that sort of business. So that's what my role was, basically creation of the story as it ended up and all the text. And it was an enormous thing because Fable's got about 160,000 words in it, which is, to put into perspective, is Black and White had 60,000 words, and a 300-page book's got about 160,000 words. So when we started, it really was a nightmare. And considering it's only just occurred to me, we won't be kept going back and rewriting bits of it. So we must have done over 200,000, I think.
Hero, you haven't saved recently. Be careful.
What it is it's got the standard story, which isn't standard because you can do what you like in the game. The whole premise of Fable is that you're not, right, what do I do next? Okay, yes, now he's told me where to go. Okay, I do that. Oh, this is difficult. I've succeeded. It really is. You go where you want, do what you want. You can stall, you can go retrace your steps, you can do it. There is a story, of course, there has to be, and everyone who plays the game are going to see the same things at certain points. We'd love to have made it so free that, it's different for everyone, but not possible. So there's a story which was written using a bunch of main characters who you'll meet at the beginning and come in and out, and various things can happen to them. That was about a third of the writing, actually, was the story. The other 2/3 was the what we call villager AI, but it's more than villagers. It's all the NPCs and indeed quite a lot of the characters as well. Every so often we just dump all the text in Fable into Excel just to review it. This is it. I'm going through it quickly because there's about 20,000 lines of it.
So there's Fable.
Yeah, this is effectively Fable. Yeah, this is what it is. You can see here, everything has a tag, which when we record it needs to know, and it just is our way of saying who says what. There's a narrator, and then this is actually the text itself. All the characters in the game have to have they have an opinion of you, based on, and it's an opinion that changes all the time based on what they know about you, not necessarily what they know they've seen, what they've been told, also what they've seen, how you look, how you've behaved, what you're doing in front of them, and whether you even interact with them. So, for example, here it's possible to get married in the game, and what you can see here is if you get married, your wife, and it could be any one of a lot of people, but if we take just one character, being married, she can love you, she can like you. You can just see this word here. She can hate you, she can dislike you, she can be neutral. She's got a judgment on what you're wearing, she's got a judgment on whether that changes. This is just for the marriage stuff, whether you've got a moustache, whether she likes a moustache or not. We wrote it originally in a spreadsheet, simply because that way there were at least 17 characters who could have all these opinions, and they all had to be different from each other, really. There was children, there were adults, there were wives, there were people, obviously, there were bandits, guards, innkeepers. So it took an absolute age. And what we ended up doing, funnily enough, is some of them we ended up letting the actors, because it all had to be recorded as well, by 17 different people. And we let the actors do quite a bit of ad-libbing, because the funny thing is, especially when you get people, the villagers can go and get drunk, and they still have an opinion of you, but they're more likely to say it if they're drunk, especially when they're scared of you. So we thought, well, I'm not sitting writing, it's a drunk knowledge. In the studio, I said, look, just be drunk. Imagine you're talking to someone you're frightened of, who's evil, but ultimately you're drunk, so you want to say something, you're not just going to be quiet. And that's what they did. And then we input it afterwards. And when they say, listen to me, I will tell you where you can find untold wealth, you think, I don't want to listen to you. You can walk off, and I go, hey, come back. And the moment, or you can attack them, you can do what you like, insult them, then they drop out of that. So suddenly they don't care about their untold wealth. Suddenly they're now thinking, what do I think about the player? What's he just done to me? That's how I'm going to react now. And and later on, and that guy later on, if you meet him again, time might have made him realise that you're not that bad, or he might still be harbouring his grudge. So there's a chance he might come back and start talking to you about what you want. Chance he'll just say, it's you again, I don't want to see you, you attack me. To be honest, the story's lovely. I really enjoyed the story, and we did. But it's this side of it that I love the most because you can play. I mean, we've been playing the game solidly in a workable format for months, and there are people here who still come up and go, "I heard a line I've never heard before." And you have sometimes now you have to be naked and evil and doing this and trying to get someone married off or something, and then you hear something
to really find the obscure.
Yeah, to find the obscure
lines. Right.
On the whole, most people go around either a bit evil or a bit good. You know, unless you really set out to be something. Yeah, exactly. You're going to be. Just because, I think it's natural, you never get to extreme unless you really try. So you never hear a lot of the extreme stuff. But then, the great thing is, at any stage you can do it, and it doesn't break the game. You're not going to be able to, no one's going to say, right, the story stops until you're good, or vice versa. You're rolling onwards all the time.
Do the NPCs have a kind of a spread of characteristics, say, if they don't like the look of people with moustaches and so on? Is that randomly generated, or have you given them all?
Let me think. On the whole, all NPCs they like a peaceful life. Right. They're scared of evil. The evil is something that they don't agree with. They can be impressed by it, and if you look evil but don't actually harm them, they can actually think you're cool. Right. But in terms of facial hair, there is one of the things you can be is ridiculous. It's actually a setting that they can
identify you as ridiculous.
Yeah, they all sort of say their little line if you're ridiculous. The moment we stop being ridiculous, suddenly you might be scary, and they'll think, hang on a minute, the rules have changed here. It's suddenly not actually making me laugh, it's actually frightening me. Yeah. Everyone's got a response if they see someone else having their head cut off. Literally, it has to be a decapitation. They'll have a response for that. So we need to be careful because we didn't want to lose the feeling that this is a slight fantasy game, but we didn't want it to be too medieval. But there is a little bit of swearing and stuff.
What do you anticipate the rating being?
It's mature.
It is.
Is it? Oh, okay.
A lot of it down to the violence, but also some of the concepts.
Violence, strong language, and sexual.
Just what we want then.
Yeah.
Fable, it's been in development for quite a while now, and there have been lots of grandiose promises of things to come, best role-playing game ever. Now we're so close to its seeing release. Peter was saying basically code has been submitted, no more changes, this is it, it's go time. How do you feel?
Absolutely terrified. Yeah. There's a number of reasons for being terrified as well.
Yes.
On one hand, not many of us are actually doing very much at the moment.
Must be something new.
No. We're sitting around with our hands poised over the keyboard, waiting for the test feedback to come back from Microsoft, saying there's a terrible problem in this area which needs fixing within 3 minutes. So nobody can go home. We're all sitting around waiting for something terrible to go wrong. It's like being at mission control during an Apollo mission or something like that. Until that damn thing's down, that there's no way you're going home. So we're sitting around just on tenterhooks at the moment. And then there's the other aspect of fear as well.
The other aspect of fear is that obviously Fable has had a lot of hype, and a lot of that actually hasn't necessarily been generated by us. It's just because the whole word freedom was applied to Fable, there's been a lot of interest in that, and also a lot of people imagining what freedom means in games. So we've had people on our boards, on our forums, basically saying, so I'm really looking forward to buying Fable because that means that I'll be able to build my own castle out of human skulls and fill them out with blood.
Yeah, thanks very much for creating this wonderful game. Yours, Timmy, aged 12.
Apart from the obvious, slightly disturbing nature of people thinking in those terms, there's the other aspect of, obviously the game can't fulfill promises like that, and while we genuinely hope that people who play the game without preconceptions will find it an enjoyable experience and find a lot more freedom in Fable than in most other games, people who think that they'll be able to make castles out of human bones probably going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about the hype now? I mean, you were saying that, as you correctly said, a lot of hype has been building up about this game now. To a certain extent, this, out of your control, basically promises a lot of things to people.
Yeah.
And, do you feel this works against you? Do you use it as motivation?
I think it has worked for us in the past because we've known what people want out of freedom. So I mean, it's meant that we have always focused on the ideas of making sure that the player, first of all, feels like he's very much in control of who his hero is, and secondly, that the world constantly reacts to you and effectively reinforces who your hero is. So everybody's reactions, everything they do in the day, pretty much when you're around, is based on who you are and what you've done previously. So that's been quite a driving force. There's also the other side to it as well, as you mentioned, which is the fact that, of course, we can't put in everything that everybody's ever imagined.
No.
I mean, in some ways, it's like, could George Lucas have ever succeeded with the episode 1? Yes, if he made a good film on it. That's not.
He didn't.
No, indeed.
But the hype is good in that obviously it does increase the profile of Fable to an extent we never dreamed of. But there is the obvious issue that some people may well be disappointed with the game just because they imagine it's something which it couldn't possibly be.
Yeah, but that's completely out of your control.
Yes, indeed.
The save system in the game, exactly how is it going to work? I mean, is the game going to be continuous, chapter-based, more?
Basically what happens is the game is a whole bunch of pockets of opportunities to pretty much do what you want, with very clear signposts as to where you can go next if you really fancy it. So there is a linear story there, for example, in order to make sure that people don't kind of go, ta-da, it's a wonderful new free world and I can do anything I want.
Yes.
What now?
We kind of realised early on that giving people a free world, they actually need direction to know what freedom actually means. So that's quite important. But basically the way it works, you have a core storyline there, and you can choose to go and take one of these core bits of the storyline, a particular quest or a particular mission. But you can also choose not to go and do that and wander around doing what you like in the world in between. So you're playing the game at your own pace, if you like. And you can save at any point during anything you're doing. I think we reset you at the beginning of a mission if you save halfway through a mission, just because we don't want people cheating. But you kind of do what you like, you play it at your own pace.
Easy, obey the law while you're here.
Looking to hire a soldier.
I don't think I like you.
We have to get to the barrow fields at the other end of Darkwood.
So there's quite a distinction between like Japanese role-playing games and Western role-playing games, and Fable seems to be incorporating like elements of both.
I don't know.
I mean, how would you align yourself with this?
I don't think we'd align ourselves with them at all, because the way we approached Fable was,
for better or for worse,
really arrogant, actually. We started Fable with the whole idea of saying, well, what did we want role-playing games to be when we were kids? What did we dream? Again, I just call that kind of aspirational. Wow, what if you could do anything you wanted? Yay! We were 7 years old for that moment, and that's why the game was on. So that's how we started, and in the course of what we did, we kind of threw away everything we ever knew about video games. It's like, okay, the way monsters, I'll throw away monsters, the way they handle kill that. Death, I'll throw away the way death's normally handled, and experience. I threw away absolutely everything until we just had those two lines I said before. Make sure whatever you do changes the way your hero looks, and make sure whatever you do in the world changes the way the world reacts to you. And we kind of built up from there. Right, well, we want monsters now, and looked at it from scratch each time. So every single new step we made, we literally reinvented the wheel from bottom up. We also found along the way that there are some really good reasons why those rules existed. They save you a hell of a lot of time, but we know that now.
But it does give Fable quite a unique flavour.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we haven't been looking at other games going, yeah, we really like that bit, let's copy that and put that in. Or let's make this Final Fantasy with blah.
Yeah, absolutely. That was never the intent.
That was never actually foremost in our mind. So Fable really is quite an odd and unique mixture of various things that have just gone in there. So I hope people playing it will not really think it's like any one thing.
Every other game I've ever come across beats you in that. You kind of play around, smack in the face, you die. Or something goes wrong, and the game says, "You're stupid. Start again." Okay. I seem to have paid $39.95 to be abused. That's what I get, and that's the kind of experience always. Slap in the face. It's almost like being in The Lord of the Rings, for example, in the cinema, sitting there and having the usher shine a torch in your face about 2 hours and go, "Excuse me, sir. I hear you have an IQ below 132. I'm afraid you're going to have to leave now." Well, I've paid my £9.50. Now I'm afraid you're going to have to leave, sir. Bye-bye, out you go. You would never do that with any other form of entertainment. Never, never, never. You wouldn't stop the person reading a book. You wouldn't usher them out of a play. So why do we do it in video games? So Fable was always designed, pretty much from the word go, as an entertainment. You'll find that as you're playing the game, it's very much more about being part of the world than feeling that somebody's got you versus the game. It's very much, again, that encourages you to play with it rather than against it. That really gives a very, very unique, strangely relaxing flavour, which I hope you'll discover this afternoon.
Well, that actually brings up an interesting point, because I mean, that's a bit of a mind shift for gamers then to make, don't you think?
Yeah, it
because
is.
the gamers are used to being told there is a correct way to do things, especially console gamers. And now you get you introducing something where there is no right way to do it.
No. We give them, as I said, we give them very, very clear signposts all along. If somebody wants to kind of tick their way through the game, finished. They can do that if they want, but we also go, oh, by the way, there's those things over there. If you're interested, you don't have to be. This is your game, remember? You paid the money for it.
I think it's more that we approached it from, in the same way something like The Sims or SimCity. The entertainment experience is actually playing the game and fiddling around with things and finding certain challenges which you have to get over, but never being forced to stop and go, right, sorry, I'm just finding this too hard, or I keep dying on this one spot, or I'm not doing this the right way, maybe I should. You should always. There are always ways in Fable where you'll be able to get past something which you're finding too difficult, and it's not that we try to make the game easy. We just try to balance it such that you find the whole thing fun rather than annoying.
The reward system isn't linked to linear progress as much as it's linked to experiencing the game world. So, for example, at the moment we've actually got a problem whereby our coders and our artists who are being told, okay, priority 1, there's a new bug, you need to go away and fix it right now. It needs to be fixed by 3:30. 3 hours later, haven't fixed the bug. And the reason they haven't fixed it, you ring them, you say, well, where are you? I'm in Darkwood. Why are you in Darkwood? The bug was in that whole glade. I don't know. And seriously, you've got people who are somewhere else, and I don't know why I'm here.
I slipped into a Zen experience.
And then it really is strange, like you just kind of get sucked into it and you play, and you come, amazingly, when you come away from Devil May Cry, my experience with Devil May Cry is this, for example, I sit there and I'm like that, the whole experience. I come away and I think, I'm never having coffee again in my life. And I'm right, okay, I need an hour to simmer down before I go to bed. With Fable, it's kind of like, come in, yeah, I'll have my beer, sit here and relax.
I'm not sure it's a good PR.
No, it's
Fable,
really,
the hippie game.
No, it's a really, really strange game. You feel the game is your friend rather than something which is constantly trying to beat you into submission. Never play me again. Never put me in the drive again. You suck. It's the game with classics. I'm your friend. I love you. So that's probably the strangest comment anybody's going to get.
I hope so. Stats-wise, I mean, role-playing games traditionally lots of statistics and everything. How does it fit into this game?
Well, but have a look at our stats screen. It's completely insane.
We've got a very silly.
Is it in people's faces all the time?
No. People can ignore it completely. But I hope people want to look because there's some really silly statistics in there.
I mean, basically, we track a lot of stuff about the player. A lot of that is reflected through his appearance, how people react to him, various things like that. But if at any point you actually want to see the history of your character, we have a stat screen which shows how far you kick chickens.
Yeah, greatest distance. Seriously.
And just ridiculous stats that we track like that. Obviously things like favourite weapons and stuff like that. This is just a ridiculous amount of stuff that we track, which we then use in game to actually have people react to. But we kind of show you that information as well if you want to see it, just so you can see how ridiculous your character is.
Yeah, we're not trying to turn off people who like traditional RPGs, but we are trying to draw in hopefully a brand new audience, people who would never normally touch an RPG. In a million years, and so that's what we pitch it as an action RPG or sort of an action adventure style experience, because I think people got a very, very concrete idea of a linear, what's what I'm looking for? Aggressive kind of experience, something which tells them they're too stupid to understand. It tells them that this is a game that's constantly going to try and be adversarial, rather than something which is an RPG is supposed to be about, which is you enjoying being in a new world for a time and kind of forgetting your usual humdrum day-to-day life.
What the hell do you look like?
Yeah, all the games that we've ever made have always been like that anyway. I've worked here for 11 years, so
a little bit easy to test. And yeah, playing this game, you know what I mean? So it's all got used to it now, but yeah, they are tough. Again, 13,000 hours, and it works out someone playing the game every day on their own for like 3 years or something.
I mean, for Black and White, we used to just literally come in whatever time you got up, work till you couldn't work anymore. We used to eat at the office, everything would leave, then breakfast, dinner, tea, then just go home. That might be in the afternoon, sleep till you feel like okay, then get up and come back. That might be the middle of the night. So, God knows, if you're losing sleep, that's
punishing schedule.
We wanted really to do that epic sort of intense story, and 2D imagery really can encapsulate what sometimes 3D cannot. But in order to make this feature complete, we wanted a way to marry it with the game, because the game is all 3D graphics, and 2D graphics is a bit of a departure.
Yeah,
so we invented a dome, which is a 3D space in which those imagery are encapsulated, and it's like a fusion between the 2D imagery and 3D, because a lot of games use 2D art to tell stories, but it really comes across as a compromise. It is really, there is a reason that they are there, and it's actually integrated in the whole story as a material place and as a symbolic sort of imagery, because in the end of the day it is a tale of a legend of a guy, and encapsulating that and capturing it on architecture and space has always been part of human history, and always the celebration of like their heroes on walls, from the caveman to the Renaissance. There are lots of opportunities that you could do with Fable, and certainly co-op play and online is definitely one of them. And if we were thinking about a sequel, I mean, obviously we're in the middle of just the last few days. The last thing on people's minds is, hey, let's start that sequel. We've got to put the product out the door, and then on Monday, so let's start it. So, but I mean, going through my mind is that Fable, definitely, if you're going to do a sequel of something like Fable, it has to be as fresh and original and as different as the original one was. You can't just make a game which is just an extension of what's already there. You have to approach it in a completely different way, and that is really, really important to think about that. So I think if we were doing a sequel, that we would be taking it very, very seriously. It's obvious when you think about it. The whole construction of Fable is about there being lots of heroes in the world that you're competing against, and that would be, conceptually, it's the idea of being real humans behind those other heroes would be pretty cool.
People are obviously really looking forward to the release of this. Only a couple of months away now. Is it going to be the best RPG ever made, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I said that was our ambition, and that's not for me to judge. It is for all the gamers to judge whether or not. I think it certainly is. I don't think there's an RPG like it. Whether it's the best, I certainly really enjoy it, and I think everybody on the team really enjoys it. And whether it's the best or not is for people to say. I mean, we have put so much love and passion and hard work into Fable, and that it's been a huge mountain to climb. I'm sure people won't like some things, but overall, I think it's as cool as we can make it.
Well, what do you say to your detractors? You say initially you overpromise on some of your games. I mean, do you use that as motivation?
Yes, I don't. I always say this one line is, we're in the middle of making Fable, and this is currently our thoughts. I don't say they're realities, and I think I have to be a lot clearer about that. I don't think anyone else in the whole industry goes out there and talks about concepts when they're still concepts, and I do, partially because I have a big mouth and I get very excited. But what I really should say when it's 3 years before a game comes out is, look, the chances of every feature being exactly like I said it 2 years ago is pretty slim. But here's the sort of ambition of what we're trying to create. And some things, the trees growing from little acorns to big oak trees just didn't make sense in gameplay. You had no way of interacting with those trees, and like 15% of the process time was just maintaining the trees. What would you rather have? More cool effects on the hero or growing trees? And okay, that is a promise. It wasn't so much a promise, it's an idea that was laid down that didn't make sense. And there's lots of things in the game that I'm sure I've talked about that aren't there. There's lots of things in the game that I haven't said to anybody, which you'll discover, which have been put in as part of the development. So I will admit I'm going to try and curb my enthusiasm in future and then tell you about features that are locked.
Some of the other things that are happening in Lionhead at the moment. I mean, just briefly, sort of out of Black and White 2 and movies and BC. I mean, which projects would you say that you personally are closest to of those at the moment?
Well, I was pretty wrapped up in Fable. Pretty much all of my time was spent on Fable up until about 3 weeks ago. Before that, I had sort of laid out and helped guide the movies, this sort of start, if you like, of movies and of Black and White 2. And then I meet, for about half a day a week just to touch base with those people. They'd probably kill me for saying this because I kept cancelling their appointments. But now that's my job now, is those two games. And probably I'm going to spend a little bit more time on Black and White 2. For a little while, and then spend a little bit more time on the movies afterwards. But they're both, I mean, the thing about it is they both got, Black and White 2 has got this fantastic designer called Ron Miller who, worked on Warcraft and Starcraft and Diablo, and so he really, really knows what he's doing. And on the movies, he's got a fantastic designer called Adrian Moore who is, has been working with me now for since he was 15 and is now in his 30s. So, both of them know exactly what they're doing, and really what I'm doing is coming in and just making sure that the game is all it can be, really, and just helping out with a few design problems that are there.
How would you sort of summarise those two projects? I mean, I know Black and White 2 is set to offer a lot of the things that people would prefer to see in the original. But how would you sort of summarise those two projects?
Well, I can tell you that Black and White 2, we are keeping a lot of stuff under our hats about Black and White 2. And one of the things that didn't work in Black and White was talking about all the game features all up front. And so we've kept lots of cool stuff back. It is going to be absolutely awesome. I mean, I have to say that, of course. I mean, I'm not going to say anything else, but let's put it this way, there is almost 3 times the number of people working on Black and White 2. There is one of the most famous designers in the world working on Black and White 2. There is, the best people that we've got at Lionhead working on Black and White 2, and it is to, we had Black and White was enormously successful. I mean, it was 2.5 million units, and that is an amazing challenge to actually do a sequel and to do something that is going to have an incredible sense of wonder and amazement about it, and to really surprise people. So the only thing I'd say about it is that it is all about being a god and feeling powerful and feeling like you have the whole world of destiny at your fingertips, and it's not about being a big-handed thing that can slap things around a bit. So there are a lot of stuff in the game. A lot of new mechanics that sort of augment and supplement what's already there. The use of physics as a if you're a god and you've got a physics system in the game, just imagine what happens when you set off a volcano. Just imagine what happens when you throw a boulder through a highly populated city and just see all the buildings just smash down. It is fantastic. The movies, it's the simplest game concept you could possibly say. You run a movie studio and make movies. Actually, behind that simple concept is an immensely complex system which enables you to build a movie studio, create stars from nobody, look after those stars. Those stars have all our experience in AI systems in them. And, the progression of AI through all of our games, you can see it growing, getting more mature, and probably the stars in the movies is, as good as it gets on the AI side. And on top of that, on top of doing this, you make your own totally unique, totally original, whatever the genre, whatever the setting, whatever the story of movies, that you can upload to a website and have judged by movie professionals. We're even trying to get really well-known directors to judge those movies, and that breaks it out of the bounds of a normal game, I think. So again, it's trying to be really ambitious, trying to do games in a completely different approach in a different way. And I think that's what Lionhead's role is to do things which are, pretty ambitious and actually take us into places that maybe other people don't dare to tread.
When you look back to your Bullfrog days and sort of look at the level of sim that was taking place in theme park and sort of compare that to now, and it's astonishing to think about the progress that's been made.
I know.
What is that, sort of 10, 15 years ago now, isn't it?
I know, actually, and it's surprisingly, you have to think a long way in the future. And one of the tough things about games development is that you have to be so insanely ambitious in the things that you do, because you kind of know that, we mustn't just be like other people today. We've just got to be, way ahead of other people. And, what we're saying about AI and what we're doing with AI is, and how important it will be within games is, very, very ambitious indeed. The thing about it is, AI is a little bit like graphics engines. No one talks about graphics engines anymore. The press used to say, "Oh, what a beautiful engine! It's fantastic. They've got more polygons on screen than anybody else." You never talk about that now, and the same is going to happen with AI. It's going to come a point where you just expect it. It's just expected to be great AI, reactional AI that it enables you to do things that have never been conceived of in games before. And the most exciting bit with AI, I guess, is certainly emergent worlds, but also the idea of AI and multiplayer stuff is really exciting as well.
So just getting back to Fable for a second. Okay. In Fable, so we've seen now that there's a bit of sexual content, basically.
Yes.
Why did you decide to incorporate this? It's just because no one's really approached it and done it in any sort of mature fashion or any sort of fashion whatsoever.
Well, it is a little bit bizarre that this industry has done, spent so much time on killing things, but nothing on what takes place in a lot of our lives a lot of the time. And which is one bizarre thing, but pun or not, as the case may be. But here's the thing. If I was going to ask you to be a hero in the world, to be the equivalent of a pop star, and you couldn't have sex, that would be pretty poor. And I think, we aren't making games for 12-year-olds. We're not. We're making games for, people of all ages, and it's part of games. When was the last time you saw a film without any sexual content whatsoever? You'd have to turn on the kids' channel. Even... there's even, heavy sexual innuendo in children's programs. So for them not to be in computer games just seems a little weird somehow. And, certainly that side of it should feature. It should be done tastefully We shouldn't have. Well, I'm not going to go down that route, but we should obviously be tasteful about it. But we shouldn't ignore it as if it doesn't exist. It's just crazy.
Do you have any ideas why it's taken the industry so long to actually start looking at this?
Yes, absolutely. It's because most of us used to be in the games industry, and I definitely include myself. We used to be the last people on earth that got any sex. So there's hardly an awful lot of inspiration when you're developing games for sex, unless you regard looking at pictures as being that.
And kind of leading on from that, in terms of still talking about the content of Fable, I mean, one of the larger implications of this pressure from society that's resulted in censorship, such as the kid's head being stabbed famously, it's now been sort of that's been taken out. So I mean, what are the larger implications of? I mean, how does this sort of impact upon the vision in the game?
Well, the world is kind of paranoid. The whole world gets paranoid about different things at different times. I mean, the world was paranoid about drugs and less so now. The world is paranoid about sex and less so now. And the world is paranoid about children and all aspects to do with children now. And I think you would be an idiot not to realise that the world was paranoid about those things. It would just be stupid to do. And you could make a game where you could do the most abominable things to any member of society, but would that be good taste, or would it be even sensible to do? I don't think so. I believe that games are going to come to a point where censorship becomes a real issue, because there are games that are talking about freedoms now. That philosophical question, is the gun evil or the person who holds the gun evil? In that, in Fable, I could give that game Fable to a censor, and they could play it in a way that they never saw anything obscene or anything, particularly evil. Where another censor could play it and say it's the most atrocious thing ever. I mean, and that's the problem that games are going to come to, because they are absolutely unique in the world of entertainment. Every other entertainment medium is about you watching someone else's vision and having no interactivity at all. And games are all about, nowadays, are much more about you playing how you want to play. It's a very personal experience, and that means it's very difficult to censor against personal experiences. It's just something which is, unique to each individual. So I predict there is going to be some game, or there's going to be some system that is going to be very controversial in the next couple of years.
One of your, it's kind of becoming recognised as a real sort of powerhouse developer now. I mean, one of your other very significant projects at the moment is, what we've known, come to know as Dmitri. And we know nothing about it other than the name.
Yes.
What's the deal?
Well, the deal is, there's a couple of things. One is, when you're working on something as ambitious as Dmitri, and it's so easy to describe what Dmitri is, and I'm just going to be tantalising here, is that if I were to describe it to you, then you would have so many questions about it, and unless I could actually show you the game physically working and how you do these amazing things, then you just wouldn't believe me. You'd think I was mad. And that's one of the reasons. The other reason is that I think for a long time I've been very irresponsible in what I've said. Other professionals in the industry have gone out and said, look, we shouldn't say anything about this game until we actually have almost finished it. And I think, it's about time I was less like a kid and more like a, professional, and said, look, just because I've had a cool idea and just because we've started something doesn't mean I should rush off to the nearest magazine and spill every single detail about the game, whether or not it's implemented. And we'll just see what that means. And Dmitri is at a stage where, I would, if I told you about it, I would be talking more about the ambitions of what the game was than the realities of what's in the game. But you were close to getting Dmitri to get to a position where you can actually see it and touch it and feel it. And it's ambitious in a completely different way to what you'd expect, I think.
I mean, would you say it's a much larger project than, or historically sort of Lionhead's biggest, perhaps, in terms of scale?
I think it's probably Lionhead's flagship technology game, really, where Black and White was our flagship technology game. You know, it had most of the technology in there and most of the sort of unique ideas in there. I think probably Dimitri is, but it's also our simplest. Again, tantalising.
I'm not going to push you any further on that, so that we don't get into any trouble.
Mm.
But I mean, just moving on, in terms of next generation, I mean, what are your initial impressions of next generation taught you, or what do you think? What do you think its potential is really?
Right. Well, I mean, as a designer, do I want more processing power and more memory, and do I want the ability to do things that are just impossible to do on the system today? Absolutely. Of course, I want that. You know, I want it. I need it. I demand it. I'm, a freak when it comes to that. However, do I want to go through the absolute necessity to reinvent absolutely everything from scratch all over again, like we had to do with Fable and with Black and White? Well, not really. And so it's a mixture of feeling excited, but oh Christ, we've got to go all through that mill again now. Hopefully, things like this thing called XNA from Microsoft is going to help us with that. I think it's very, very ambitious, and I just have to hope that it works, because otherwise we could be looking at really long development cycles again. We have to stop games taking 4 years. Now there are lots of people in the industry saying, okay, we're at about 70 to 80 people on big projects. That's going to go up way beyond 100, near 150. And that means that games are going to cost, they're going to start reaching breaking the 10 million, even 20 million barrier. And there's just not enough people with enough confidence to fund £20 million projects. So something's going to have to give. It's a bit like when Hollywood started being obsessed with making Cecil B. DeMille blockbusters. Suddenly films went from this little, fairly small production methodologies into these massive, huge opuses that cost hundreds of millions of dollars. And, that Hollywood industry couldn't sustain that. Something had to give. And so they went, it became less about Hollywood spectaculars and more about, more contained films for a while. And I think, we've got to find routes and ways of doing games that don't cost so much. I mean, the big problem with the industry at the moment is it is absolutely hellish for a huge number of developers at the moment. Guildford, the place that we're sitting in now, a few years ago had 9 developers. It's now got 3, including us. And that sort of death rate is going to be awful for the industry, awful for creativity and awful for innovation. And it's, that's a big problem with going through this generational cycle. It just means that everything's going to get more expensive, it's going to get tougher again. And, part of me wants it, part of me wants to put it off.
And similarly, what do you think about Satoru Iwata's stance that games, are far too complicated? I mean, Fable was sort of one of the most complicated games of recent memory. And obviously he believes that games are far too complicated now. And how do you react to that?
I absolutely 100% agree. I think Fable cuts a fine line between complexity and simplicity, and there was definitely part of me when I was thinking about Fable was thinking, all this stuff, this expression system, the multiple combat systems, all of that stuff that's going on, would it not be better just to have one button and that's it? And we just find ways of doing that one button and dealing with that one button. Because at the end of the day, can I really be bothered as a player to learn all this stuff? Now, the route through it in Fable is we don't require you to learn those things. We don't require you to learn the advanced combat system. We don't require you to learn the expression system. You can just play the game with one button and that's it. So there's a simple route there. But I absolutely agree with him in that, to me, games should be about simplicity. Depth, absolute depth, amazingly deep and incredible worlds, but really simple to play because people, understandably, don't want to learn. They don't want to feel like they're learning. And I think games have already gone through a massive simplification process. And that applies to every genre, from RPG to RTS to first-person shooters. It's gone, simple is good. And you only have to look at things like Battlefield. What Battlefield did, which was so brilliant, was have absolute simplicity. Same controls, every aircraft, every plane, even controlling a troop. And yet, there's an amazing depth there, and that's the brilliance of that design. Some people, probably including myself, if they were trying to do Battlefield, would think, right, I've got to, what command would I use, what key press would control the flaps and the gear coming down and the ailerons and all that, and you'd end up with button presses like that. But actually, what do people want? They want to fly a plane. They don't want the reality of flying a plane, they want the emotion of flying a plane, and that is all about simplicity. So I think it's right, and it's, as a designer, simplicity is the most terrifying word of all. It's that's the hell which you have to design around.
Are you ever tempted to go along the Sega route of some of their, just talking about this simplicity, sort of like Super Monkey Ball comes to mind. Are you ever tempted to do something that's kind of the complete opposite to what you've done more traditionally recently, and do something like that?
There is, I'd love to do some games which probably would surprise you. I would absolutely love to do a sports game. I'd love to do a football game. A football game. I would love to do a soccer game. The reason I'd love to do a soccer game because, it just hasn't changed. That genre of game has not changed one iota since kickoff and sensible soccer, and that was it. It hasn't changed at all, and it's great the opportunity to be able to change that. And some of the pure things that you'd love to do, would be attractive. Actually, there's something here that somebody did called Mark Healey. He did this game called Ragdoll Kung Fu, which is fantastically simple but amazingly deep. We can have a look at it later if you like. And that is really, really cool. It's really, really simple, but really, really, really sort of what you can do is really complex but really simple in the mechanics. But I actually think something like Super Monkey Ball is insanely hard because there's lots of games in one, and it actually is quite difficult. Quite difficult to do. There's one game which, when I saw it, my mouth dropped open. It was on the Game Boy, and it was called WarioWare.
Yeah.
And it's like 200 games. And I saw that, and I thought, Jesus, they've got one button and this, controller. They can do all this stuff with one button and this controller, and that is pretty incredible.
And just going back to what you were saying about the situation locally and pretty much everywhere regarding developers. And looking at Lionhead, have you ever considered expanding in the way that Carl Jeffrey has done with Climax? With these satellites overseas. He's got places on the West Coast and a few other places. Is that something?
Carl was, he's done. It's amazing. It's a global dominance, and we did have this idea of a satellite scheme for a long time. For example, Big Blue Box used to be in another town called Godalming, and Intrepid is still up in Wimbledon. But here's the thing, it is so hard making a game, and there's so much that you have to do, and there's so many problems, that to feel like you are remote from each other, and not able to have meetings, and not able to do cool things like what we do at Lionhead. We have all the AI people from all the games that we're making get together really regularly and talk about the problems they will have, and all the scripting people talk about the problems they have. You can't do any of that stuff You can't say, well, I'll just pop over and have a look at what you're doing. And I think that distance actually makes it harder making a game. So I prefer us being closer together. Maybe not on top of each other, but certainly closer together. But who knows how big Lionhead's going to get? I mean, I said famously, I think I never want to work with more than 20 people back in the mid-90s. And now I'm working 270, so who knows?
There's a great deal of conservatism amongst a lot of the publishers these days. And I mean, you obviously have a lot of faith in the industry going forward. But I mean, how do you convince your peers, basically, that they don't need to be so conservative? They should put a bit more faith into the industry.
Yeah, that's kind of talking about the pitch, the publisher pitch. And here's the thing is, you've got to remember when you design a game, you can't design in the blue sky. You've got to convince people that this game is going to sell. And my absolute ambition, absolute dream is to make a game that millions and millions of people enjoy. And that's the first thing that you have to do, is to convince people that, this, and all of the games I've ever done always have one line attached to them. Fable is to be a hero. Get the player to feel like a hero. God is, play God, and Theme Park was design and build your own theme park. And so they always have that clear message. This is what is going to be on the box. This is why people are going to be excited about it. And I think that you portray to a publisher, and that's the thing that they buy into. I then say, incidentally, we're doing all these other cool things, which means that it's going to be even cooler than that. But it's just remembering that, the number of units that you sell for a publisher is the reality. It is the reality of making games, and you've got to make games that make sense and sell. And the last thing I want to do is to make a game that 5 people enjoy, even though it could be amazingly cool. But so I think you have to just be professional about your approach, and touch wood. I've always managed to convince the marketing people and the PR people and the executives at publishers that we will make a title that is going to be successful. And the same team of people out here, obviously much bigger now, have now made, Fable is the 11th title that has a chance of selling, a large number of units. I mean, all of the titles going back, I think the lowest selling one was Magic Carpet, at 700,000 units. And a lot of that is because, it's originality, but making something that people hopefully want to play, which is, there's a lot of luck that's involved there. There's a lot of luck, and there's a lot of tricks as well. There's lots of tricks to trying to make games that people want to play, not least of which is every single week at Lionhead we have 3 people in from the general public, kids, old people, young people in, and just to sit down to them and treat them seriously and with respect and listen to what they say. And if they're bored of a game after a week, then you've got to think, right, well, they're bored. What does that mean? It means that there's something going wrong there. And taking that really seriously through all the areas of development, I think is really important. I mean, if we ever really truly lock ourselves away in an ivory tower, then that's the day when we start making crap, to be honest.
How do you see the whole, PS3 Xenon thing playing out? Essentially the living room space of next gen. I don't know about what you think, but I don't like to include, whatever it's called, revolution in the 3, because it's clearly, it's a living room market as opposed to like a bedroom market, And I mean, how do you see things playing out over the next 5 years?
Well, I mean, this is a purely personal point of view. You've got to be careful because obviously it's, as you know, it's very sensitive. But personally, I don't really care about what this box is. I don't even care. I mean, the most thing I care about personally is that it doesn't look ugly if it's in my living room. That, you know, my partner she's not going to sort of say, what is that thing doing here? Just take it into your little garden shed and get it away from it. That's probably the most important consumer thing in there. The most important thing at the end of the day is the obvious thing. It's the games that you can play on it. And, you know, what I think about the next generation is probably everyone's expectations are going to be unbelievably high. And actually, it's not the hardware manufacturers that have to pay the price of that expectation. It's the people who develop the games, because we will have to, you know, we are going to have to get really close to what people have wanted to play, and that is sort of cinema quality, film quality gameplay, I would call it. That is, you know, and you can see it happening. You can see that games are starting to not have just simple sort of little jaggy power lines around them. There's having proper smoke and proper particle effects and proper physics and proper AI, and we're going to have to take that way up there. So in the end, you know, the real difficult struggle isn't making that box. It's making what goes in the box, and that's going to be a real challenge, because this generation cycle has been so short that we really only just now getting to grips with the technology for the boxes that are there. The same applies to the PC, incidentally. You know, we haven't even managed to. There's very few games I can think of that really utilise the power of the graphics cards as they stand at the moment. We're already refreshing that completely, and we just need to make sure that there's the content there for it. I mean, the interesting machine for me is the PC. Is that there has been very, very little on the PC to make me excited. There's been very little to make me excited, and the fascinating thing is just now we're just coming to the point where there's some really cool stuff coming. There's Half-Life 2, which I am literally, you know, on the edge of my seat for. I mean, I wouldn't like to be in their shoes for all the tea in China, because the expectations of that game is just way out there. There's Doom 3, I think they've been really smart cookies. I think they've just been so quiet about Doom 3, and I'm pretty convinced that they're going to come up with an amazing game, because they're smart guys. You know, there's Battle for Middle-earth, there's Rome Total War, there's a lot of cool movies, and Black and White 2, and I've got to include, of course, and there's a lot of cool stuff, because what's happened is everyone's thought, just a minute, we're coming through another generational leap, we better just start thinking about the PC again. And the PC has the power already to make some pretty stunning games. I mean, way, way beyond anything that you can think about at the moment.
Would you ever consider bringing back? Would you ever consider bringing back the Populous franchise?
I have no rights to do anything on Populous. I would love to do I would love to go back to Populous 1 and redo Populous 1 with all its simplicity. It still would be, you know, we were talking about simplicity earlier on. I'd love to do that again.
So you just need a cooperative arrangement with EA in order to do it, would you?
Yeah, easy. Just phone them up and see what they say.
And you see that as being, what we look at as a simple quote-unquote project.
I would. It's everything. This is what I would do with Populous. I would go back to the land modification side, and that would be the core of the game. But there's tons of stuff that you could do with that, which would be so cool. And I'm tempted to tell you about that, but I won't. But there's some very cool stuff that you could do there.
You're obviously training yourself very well to hold back.
Yes, look at me, I'm a reformed character.
Okay, that's great. Great interview, and really appreciate your...
No, not at all. Do you want to take a quick look at Mark's Ragdoll come through? Yeah, let's just take a quick look at it because it is fantastic. Making a game is so.
Do you want food?
Yeah, I will do actually. Thank you. Look at this thing.
2009 first time.
Yeah, exactly. And 68. No, 67. You're editing this, aren't you?